And welcome to the Temple Wildcat Coaches Show, brought to you by Wings Pizza and Things in Temple. Here, normally I have Coach Stewart here with me, but, normally, unfortunately, we took a 49-34 defeat to the Manville Mavericks, and I'm here with the voice of Wildcat football, Mr. Joe Palmer himself. How you doing, sir?
Oliver, I'm doing fine. I'm a little disappointed that we're not getting ready for another football game this
Man,
week.
I tell you, definitely in the same boat with you there. Guys definitely went out there and put a valiant effort, coming from a game having 4 turnovers and late in the fourth quarter to still have a chance to win, it just shows the grit that our guys have. But, like we said, unfortunately, the season has come to an end. But, guys really just put it all out there, though.
Coach Stewart was talking, and he talked to a reporter. I managed Greg Willie at the Telegram, and one of the things he talked about were of course, the turnovers. And when you give them a short field 2 times right at the start of the game, I think one was about the 17-yard line, if I remember right, and then the other was midfield. So when they have 2 short fields, and all of a sudden you're down 21-7 or 20-7, whichever. Oh, actually they went for 2, didn't they? So it's 21-7. Then that's hard to come back from a team that has the type of kids that Manville has. Yeah,
and that just, when you just to go off what you were saying, when you give a team like that that's just loaded with a bunch of Division I talent, short field like that, our defense put up a great effort, but eventually they're just going to get in, just being that short of a field.
Yeah.
And just another thing, that we saw. Kind of that second half, they were starting to get a little tired. And, we were saying during the broadcast, it was something else that kind of went to our favor. They haven't been in this many close games like that. And you could see our guys were starting to kind of catch a little bit of a stride. But
our kids, it's interesting. The fourth quarter has been really interesting with Temple in the sense that it seems like they always start putting things together, and you can see that other teams start wearing out a little bit. And even this bunch, when we scored to where we're 8 down, if I remember right, and that was on that north end zone there at Prairie View. When we scored, their kids were down. They were, and literally mean down. They were on their knees, and they were, you could tell they were tired. Of course, that was a pop series with some really great passing going on and runs as well, but particularly the passing game. Of course, that was the big challenge, which really, probably the thing that surprised me the most. One, the turnovers. When you're playing a team that has Division I players on the other side, and we can talk about those in a little bit as far as who they are and kind of where they're going, because if I remember right, they had 3 kids going to A&M, they had a North Texas kid, had a Missouri kid, had a Prairie View, and that's just a few that I remember. Seemed like an SMU, maybe someone. So, but when you have that type of talent, it's hard to come back on those. And then when you get them to that point to where they're starting to get tired, you feel like you're at that stage to take advantage of it. But again, their talent just showed up there at the end.
Yeah.
And they put the ball on. They didn't throw the ball. They just put the ball on the ground and took that big offensive line and pushed against us.
When you got to set a group of guys like that, why not get behind them and just see what happens? And I feel like this was the first team we dealt that just had we don't have our stable of running backs.
No. We started out with 4, and we had 2 the other night.
That just kind of flourished. But I'm just saying, as far as, another team that just has, about a group of just 3 running backs that just had a little of everything with those guys that we went against.
Yeah, that's kind of our normal game, Glenn Oliver. We had the Deneric Prince, that's the kid that signed at A&M. Ladarius Owens, who was their workhorse. I think he actually had the most yardage the other night, and then the kid named Garrison Johnson. Now Johnson was the transfer. Yeah, he actually transferred during the summer, and so that was a new, and he carried the ball more than anyone else. So it's really interesting how they utilize those kids, pretty much like we did. And the other part to it, I thought that's pretty interesting in the game, and this is just, if you weren't there, you didn't realize it, but there's a lot of strategy that bunch used. The coaching staff is certainly, it's a sharp group of guys, and then you've got Coach Martin, whose son was a quarterback. He's the kid headed in North Texas, but even their uniforms were set up to work against the guys in the press box, because we had a first-hand look at it, and you literally could not see what was on their jerseys. Now, when I went down to the other end of the field, other end of the press box, and talked to the guys that were announcing the game, the folks from Manville all had binoculars. Every one of them had binoculars with them. And when I saw that, I thought, because we'd been there the week before and we could see the numbers easily.
Yeah.
You know, when we played Memorial, I mean, it was black and red, and you could see them. They had those that black uniform because they wanted to wear black, even though they were the home team or the visiting team. Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting that. And we can still see those red numbers, but man, that Friday night, I was looking for Cole, you know, my grandson the whole night, because he's the one's got the young eyes, you know, he's 15, and I was like, Cole, can you see that number? And it was hard to see.
Yeah.
So I would almost bet that even the stats that are in the paper may not be right, because there were some plays that you just could not tell who it was that had the football, and their numbers across the front, they were 2, 21, and 10 were the backs, and then the quarterback was 12. So you get all that combination. So the guys in our box, that are coaches, they're looking for a particular, combination of players that are out there. Depending on what, from scouting, they know kind of what they run. But it had to be hard on them. It's not an excuse, but it's not an excuse, it's just part of the game.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's just something to try to mess with, and that small little thing can mess up a bunch.
Yeah. Well, and there were a couple of plays, if you remember, there was a couple of sets there that the quarterback ran. He ran for 2 different touchdowns, if I remember right, and they were wide open. Yeah. And so whatever package they had in at that time and what we had set up, they knew exactly how we were going to set to that. And I don't think either time, one was about 8 yards and one was a little further. If I remember, I don't believe anybody put a hand on him.
No, he just kind of had that little quarterback sweep around and was just untouched.
Of course, before the game, Art and I had been talking about how the quarterback doesn't run. Anytime I told Art before the game, I said, man, anytime you start talking about somebody's not going to run or someone's not going to pass, I guarantee they'll either run or pass for something. So, but he's a good athlete.
Oh yeah.
And the other thing about the Martin kid, his name's Casey Martin, and of course he's a starter last year. And as far as I know, he may have started the year before. I don't remember, but as a sophomore at least played. But he is a smart kid. He's a big kid. I think he's 6'3" and weighed over 200 pounds, and he's just a smart kid. He knows football, and that's a lot of times you get that when you have a coach's kid quarterbacking.
Hey, but it's definitely what we dealt with, and I mean, I wish them the best going forward.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, definitely wish them the best, because I know they've been knocking on the door for a while. So.
Yeah, I had another guy in the office the other day said there's 2 things he roots for on Friday night. One is that Temple wins. The other is that Highland Park loses. So we still got a bitter taste from last year, and that little escapade with Highland Park up in Cary World. So, but that's football and that's fans, and so that's fun.
That's just that Texas high school football. You gotta love it to the T. But man, we had a great season. Definitely nothing to look down on. And after the break, we'll come back to highlight some of the good points of the season. And welcome back to the Temple Wildcat Culture Show, brought to you by Wings, Pizza, and Things in Temple. Back with the voice of the Temple Wildcats, Mr. Joe Palmer. And as I was saying, our seasons unfortunately came to an end. But man, it has been a whirlwind of a season, to say the least. Back to starting belting, and all this. It blew by like that. When you're having a good time, it goes by. And
well, we were talking the other night, Oliver, about the fact that we have broadcast the last 2 years with you this year, but Art and I, we did 16 games last year and 14 this year. So we've basically done 3 seasons in 2 years. We've done 30 football games, and so but it does fly by fast, and you get to kind of where you're looking for that Friday night, and that's one of the things that's good for our kids, and that it gives kind of organization and purpose to that fall. And anytime we're still playing football, our classes are going well. Everything works better when you're still in football, as far as focus and having kind of something to look forward to each Friday night. So now I will say, Friday night when we were talking at the end of it, is about 11 o'clock, because I think we're close to 11 o'clock, and I'll tell you that my wife, who listens to us, she very seldom hears the post-game show. So she's usually already gone by the time the post-game show. But Friday night, when I made mention of the fact that Art and I both, Marion, you have a very significant other one, and way over your head, and so that's a lot of Friday nights to be away from your family and your girlfriend and whatever. So I was telling her how much I appreciated her doing that, and I thought, there's no way she'll hear this. Well, she was up. Yeah. The first night that she was actually up and heard it. So I don't know if it did me any good, but in any case, it was pretty fun. But It does go by fast, and you know, here's something that's interesting, and I got to think about this last week before the game, and put this before you. The last 2 years have been basically identical. We played the same folks because we were in 5A, and you do the same schedule 2 years in a row, and we got beat, you know, first by Midway.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't play that well a part of that game, and that's it. The first year their quarterback Mordecai was out. And really should have beaten them that year when we were over there. This year we had them down, and then right at the end, just kind of things kind of came apart, you know. And the kid does what a good quarterback does, you know, took it down and scored on us, and then we had a turnover close down around the downs, and they scored again right at the end, beat us by 2. But we had a chance at that bunch. Same thing with Cedar Ridge. Cedar Ridge, not a good game, you know, and we wind up getting beat. College Station didn't play all that bad, but still should have beaten them, you know. But what's interesting to me about that is that was identical the year before. I mean, exactly the same thing had happened. And there's 2 things about that. One is those were the teams that were supposed to beat Temple, and they did. And so our 3 losses were teams that were supposed to beat us. So when you really look at the season, we didn't have, quote, an upset. And then the teams that we did beat were the ones that were ranked under us. So it kind of played out both years. Last year, when we hit Manville, they were supposed to beat us. And that's the upset of the year, and that's why we went on the next round and the next. This year, they were ready, and of course, it happened what happened. But the other piece to that is really incredible to me is that all 4 of those teams, the 2 6A teams in Midway and in Cedar Ridge, and the 2 5A teams in College Station and Manville, they're playing this Friday. Every team that has beaten Temple they're in the semifinals this Friday. So they're one of the top 4 teams in that 6A division. Now I guess it's Division 2 and 5A Division 1. They're all still playing this Friday night. And do they have a chance? Midway, I think, they get Allen. I want to think they get Allen, and then Cedar Ridge is down on the other end. They're headed toward lost it. But in any case, neither one of them are favored, I don't believe. But you never know what's going to happen on a Friday night football. So you have to say it was a great season for the kids simply because we play some top teams, and we play them close. You know, each one of those games could have gone either way. Really, we could have been 10-0. Just like, you know, instead of 7-3, and Manville, it wasn't beyond our capabilities because we were, you know, of course, it's always easy to say if it wasn't for the you know, the interceptions and the turnovers and so forth cost us certain touchdowns. What you don't know when you say that is they may have still taken the ball out of a punt and driven it down and still been. But when you get ahead quick like that, you have a real chance of quitting. And the good thing that's always been the case with the Temple kids, and ever since at least I've been here, even when we weren't winning, was they never quit. They just don't quit.
Yeah, and that just shows the dividends of Temple Wildcat football. You know, it's the reason we play these rigorous schedules and whatnot, because you see late it pays dividends. And like you said, all those teams are still playing football right now. So that just shows you the type of schedule we play and the reason that we have this playoff success and everything, and the reason we've been to state a couple years here recently and whatnot. And we're always into the playoffs deep. You know, all that pays off rather than some of these bigger powerhouses and you pay maybe, some people may say, a cupcake schedule, if you will. And, you know.
Well, it depends on if you want to build your schedule or build your program. You know, if you want to build your win and losses, if you want to build your resume, I guess would be the way of putting that. If a coach wants to build a resume, then they look for those teams that they know they can beat. And they can go, you know, whatever till they get to district. They can go 4-0, 5-0, or whatever it is. And then when district gets here, then they may or may not have a winning record. But it's been certainly since Mike Spradlin was here. There's not been an easy person on our schedule. I don't think you can name a football team, even Round Rock, that was down this year. The other years they've gone to playoffs. Now this is the first year we've run into Jeff Cheatham and his group being down. So we don't have a person on that schedule outside of district that we can say, hey, this ought to be an easy win. We can get our kids in there and so forth. But the other thing I was thinking about the other night too, just throw this out as far as we were talking about the ball game. I miss the Jackson kid.
Oh,
you know, and obviously we did.
sense.
That's what happened. You know, last year when we got beat, we had one of our main running backs that round. I think Jefferson had gotten hurt the game before, and then our starter had gotten hurt right before that that Highland Park game. So that kid is amazing to me, and that's you know, we're talking about this year, but when you start looking at next year, and Art's mentioned this several times. You know, you look across, and I've got them up here. You know, our offensive line. We've got a sophomore, and a junior that were regular starters. So 3 out of those 5 front guys are back. Now, of course, we lose Xavier, Deontay Hextall, and then Keon is still around with us. And then Rumfield, obviously. But, you know, Rumfield was a 1-year starter. He just played varsity 1 year with not playing his sophomore year that much and then being injured his junior year. And then, of course, Wiley's back on that side of it. And then in the backfield, the 2 kids that are back with Anthony Jackson and the John Overton. I go with that.
Oh, yeah.
If I were Craig Martin, I'd still, you know, line up the offense.
Yeah.
And then they've got some other sophomores that may fill in there. And from what I understand, there's Jared, of course, he's a big, tall kid, got a good arm and everything. But there's also another kid that plays quarterback that will give him a push for his money, and that's always good to have in your offense. And as far as kids behind those that are good, makes the starters better.
Oh yeah, definitely. And welcome back to the Temple Wildcat Coaches Show, brought to you by Wings, Pizza, and Things in Temple. Back here with the voice of Wildcat football, Mr. Joe Palmer. Like we were saying, it's really just been a whirlwind of a season, and you know we got we have a bunch of key losses, obviously, but at the same time, we got a lot of young guys coming up. We still got some time here, so I'm very excited to see the future with next year. And, man, what would you say you feel like was one of your big highlights of the season? Like, if you could just pick a moment or a game or something that
you want to know
happened.
what the real highlight is? I'll tell you honestly. One, this isn't the biggest one, but one of them is just getting to know the kids. And of course, you don't know them personally, but you know them as a football player. And you know what they can do. And from the press box view, the interesting thing about the play-by-play, and of course, the title, the voice of the Temple Wildcats, is always one that it's a little embarrassing to me. I mean, because it just sounds like, you know, you're building this thing up. But I do enjoy trying to present what's going on, and it has been really fun as far as talking to folks in the community. You know, I've told the story before that, you know, for 8 years I've been the assistant superintendent of human resources. I'm in charge of about 1,300 people as far as how they're doing, their wages, their hiring, their firing sometimes, and nobody even really cared or knew. And the first football game I announced, all of a sudden everybody in town knows who I am. So it tells you where the blue front and white back comes as far as Temple, Texas, and how important football is. And the other night, you remember we had a guy that's listening in Illinois and stopped at a truck stop and was listening to the ball game, you know, streaming up there. Had another guy in Chillicothe, Missouri. I guess that's where it is. And then, of course, all over the place as far as people that are tied. And I think Art has people all over the country that he knows, you know, that are listening to what's going on. So, but the thing that probably has been most enjoyable as far as just me personally has been the ride to those football games with my 14 and 15-year-old grandson. And you know, he actually lives in Woodway, in Midway, and but every Friday night our rendezvous is at Bruce Valetti, and so we've gone through the construction phase for 2 years, which is horrible. Sometimes it takes me an hour to get there and back to Temple, but spending time with him on the road has truly been as enjoyable as anything you can imagine. It'd be kind of like you riding with your girlfriend down there, but better for me. But that's probably been one of the most remarkable things about it. And the other thing about Cole and what he's done, he does a remarkable job on those stats. I mean, I was looking at the paper, and they're pretty much lined up right with what the paper has, and you know, that's a kid up there using his iPhone and putting in penalties. And I can understand the easy plays like so and so rushed 5 yards, but what all goes in there and how fast it has to go in there, and that's been you know, the real challenge to high school football announcing the games now compared to the way it used to be, you know, 15, 20 years ago when I first did games with Belton, and did a little bit with UMHB when they first started. More on the color side than the play-by-play, but you don't have any downtime.
Yeah.
I mean, once that game starts, if it weren't for Mr. Pemberton, for Gene Pemberton, we'd all be dying. I mean, because there is not a break. I mean, the timeouts last 30 seconds at best. The guys I know back in the studio are like, we need more time for some commercials, but man, you know, I mean, you're on constantly. And the other night, that bunch, the way that game started, they'd probably run 10 plays in the first few. I mean, it's just incredibly fast, because they had them all scripted out, and man, they just took that ball and whoosh right down the field, and we come back, you know, do the same thing. So the difference between ball games nowadays and what it used to be, you know, on a wing tee you line up and there's usually one guy or two, and it's, you know, it just is what it is, the rush, and all you're looking at is trying to see where the ball is after they go up through that line of scrimmage. But now, you know, the plays, the wide open field, the catches, or did they catch it or not? So it's been real enjoyable. I've enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
My wife asked me the other day, said, "You going to do this again?" I said, "Man, I sure do like it." So I don't know what the future holds, but it's been a real pleasure to be a part of all this. And this station does a great job too, and has for years and years. And to go ahead and digitize it and put it, you know, make it digital instead of where everyone can hear it. So, and I think that's what's expanded the audience as far as people listening to Temple Wildcat football. They're able to hear that no matter if they're in Temple, Texas, or if they're in Chillicothe, Missouri, or wherever that is. So, in any case, that's getting to know you guys. Is you know, art's fun to be around. Art. I don't know if you know this, but Art started out as a swimsuit salesman in Alaska. No, I'm messing with you. No, but the truth is, he can sell anything. Art's a salesman, so when you start, when you turn it loose with him, if he has a little time, he can take it and roll with it. I'm not good at that. I'm a lot better at what's going on down there and trying to picture what they're doing. And I think the only thing that and the fans that hear this and they listen, the only thing, I never get upset at the kids. I mean, I'm not going to do that. They're kids. But the officials drive me crazy, and they always have, you know. And what's funny was the other night I thought we had a pretty good officiating crew the week before last, and everybody I'd see would say, "That's the sorriest bunch I've ever had." So I'm not sure, you know, what people see sometimes from up there and from down close. But anytime that would be a bad job. I would not want to be a high school official in any form, especially in playoffs, and especially with everybody filming everything like they do nowadays. You know, used to you get by with the other black and white 16 millimeter, but with all the different angles and you know, they're going to see everything. So anyhow,
man,
I'm sorry. I got it rolling on that.
I'm good. I mean, hey, you broke it down.
It really is a fun deal, and I really have enjoyed getting to know you. I mean, you know your football stuff. It's always nice to have somebody up there that's looking at what's really going on. I mean, we're going to be looking at backs and receivers, but you know, what happens, the football's won and lost up there in the front.
Those trenches.
Yep, it's in the trenches, and you hear it, but you don't, you know, the time you realize it is when they get a penalty called on them. But it's just like the other night, you know, he was able to pass for 400 yards because of those 4 or 5 guys up front. You know, you don't pass for 400 yards if you don't have a line that's protecting you. Now, you know, the other piece of that was we couldn't run the ball or didn't run the ball. But the other piece of that, in honesty, you know, we're talking about not being able to run it. When you're down 21-7 to the #1 team in the state as far as 5A Division I, you can't run the ball that much. I mean, you don't have time to run it and get back into it because they have that ability to score every time just like you do. So, in any case, it's been a great year. The last two, I truly admire Coach Stewart. What he does, all the hard work that Steve Prentice puts in behind the scenes is remarkable. Wendy Scribonic, and then of course my tie as far as getting all the information that I get from Coach Holscher. He takes care of my defensive side or the offensive side of it, and then Coach Martin, Craig Martin, who's one of the offensive coordinators. He sends me all the goodies on the other side of it. So it makes it really getting a pattern during the week of getting all the charts together and the information on the kids and look at some film on Max Preps has got everything out there. So it's fun to do, but it's not nearly as easy as it used to be, or that a lot of folks think it is to try to do what has to be done up there. So
Yeah, well, like I said, it's definitely been a whirlwind of a season. I've enjoyed it. You know, Lord willing, we're back here with it next year.
Yep.
But hey, well, this is going to sign off for the Temple Wild Coaches Show for 2017. It's definitely been a pleasure, y'all, and let's do it again next year.
All right. Ready to go.